What's up, everybody? This is the Art Mentor here, showing you some basics of how we work with clay. All right, so everybody, first thing we need to know is what kind of clay I'm working with here. So I have here a 25-pound bag of white clay with GROG from the Ceramic Standard Company. Now, y'all need to know this. The reason why that you want to work with GROG in your clay versus not GROG in your clay. GROG, by the way, just to back up for a second, that's the rough little sandish particles that you're going to feel in your clay. The reason why you're going to want to work with clay with GROG in it is because this allows you to build free-form, hand-built sculptures, and it's going to have a lot of rigidity to its form. Conversely, you're going to want to work with clay without GROG if you're going to be working on a potter's wheel and throwing anything. If you work with clay with GROG on a potter's wheel, trust me, from experience, it's going to rip up your hands. It's going to feel really, really terrible. So you definitely don't want that experience. But for hand building today, I'm going to be working up my white clay with GROG. I tend to like white clay. In the past, I've worked a lot with red clay. I don't like the red clay so much as the white clay. The white clay has some distinct advantages to it. So first off, and my past students would definitely say the same thing about this. This is a much better quality clay. It comes from a deeper part of the Earth's crust. So it's much more rigid. It's easier to keep hydrated as you're working on it. And it also is way easier when it comes time to paint and or glaze any of your sculptures because it's going to, again, fire white. Now you might be looking at this and you're like, what do you mean this isn't white, dude? It is. Clay always has a different color in its working greenware state than when you go ahead and fire. Okay? So that's what I'm working with today. Let's get into this. Now, first thing you all need to know about whenever you work with this material, this is not like your standard material. A lot of times people jump into working with clay under the misperception, perhaps, that working with clay is like maybe working with some other hard stone materials. It's not like working with, say, like marble or granite. It actually doesn't have a lot of rigidity to its form, and it has some certain rules that it has to follow. One of them being this: the second that you take clay out of this bag and you start to work with it, clay wants to die, all right? And that sounds really sad and morbid, but it's true, y'all. This is like Sporky from Toy Story 4, you know what I'm saying? Like, this thing just wants to go into the trash and never be seen again because you're constantly working against it. And that's what makes it a really different experience in making art. So, for example, if you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna work on a drawing, you can work on a drawing for days, weeks, months, years, no problem. You can work on a painting for days, weeks, months, year. A couple issues with blending every once in a while, but you're gonna be able to do that. With clay, we are constantly working against two major enemies all the time, all right? Because clay does not want to stay out like this. So the first enemy that we're always working against is time, y'all. So the reason why time's an issue is because, again, the second you take clay out of the bag, that sucker, it just doesn't want to work with you anymore, okay? It's going to take the moisture out of your hand. It's going to take the moisture out of the air and off your surfaces and stuff too. Sometimes some ceramists like to work on like canvas cloths and stuff too, and that actually dries out the clay a lot too. So the longer period of time that you're working with clay, the harder it becomes to continue to work with it if you're not caring for it properly. Then the second enemy of clay we're constantly working against is temperature. If you're working in an environment that is either too hot or too cold, or you're not properly hydrating your project, it is going to dry out like crazy. And again, once it becomes dried out, this is no longer a workable material. This is, again, what makes it unique, and we have to respect this about this medium, is because we have to work with it. We have to learn how we are going to adapt what we want to do, and sometimes we've got to make some compromises and considerations for it too, about how we're going to go about and actually make something beautiful out of this pound of mud. That's essentially what this stuff is. To put it very crudely, that's what's up. You can dig this stuff up, not the white perhaps, but you can dig this stuff up in your backyard most of the places on planet Earth, okay? So yeah, now here's what we're gonna get into. We're gonna get into, here's just stupidly simple, basic stuff. Here's the most important thing you must know when you work with clay. You can never just go ahead, take it out of the bag, and then go ahead and start to sculpt with it. Why? Because there's a heavy probability that it's going to explode. And that's not usually something that you have an issue with in any other art medium as well. You know, you never go ahead and you're starting to put paint on your paper and then poof, things blows up on you. It doesn't happen, right? But with clay, this is a very real issue. And here's why, is because when you're just going ahead and you're grabbing clay out of a bag, or you're just grabbing clay, even if you perhaps are grabbing some recycled clay, or you have some stuff that other people have been using, what's up is that inside of here, no matter how thick and well prepared this appears to be on the outside, on the inside, there are little tiny air pockets. And air pockets are bad, all right? They are clay's worst enemy in the world. Because what happens is when you're done with the ceramics piece, and you go ahead and you put that piece out to dry, and then you put it into a kiln for it to cure and vitrify into its final form there before you glaze it or paint or do everything you want with it. Those little air pockets, you won't know that they're there most of the time. Even when you're really experienced, you might have a mishap every once in a while, but those air pockets, they trap heat, okay? And you just think about basic science here in thermal expansion, okay? When you have a small pocket and it's just being pounded with hot air, what's happening to it? Pressure is building up. And when that pressure has nowhere to go, it's gonna find a way and boom, it's gonna blow up. So this is why when we work with clay, the first thing we gotta do is we have to what's called wedge it, all right? We're gonna wedge our clay every single time. Now, I'll tell you this, all right? One thing that the manufacturers will always tell you is that this comes pre-wedged. I don't trust it because this was cut from a machine, all right? And I don't think that there are many efficient machine wedging machines, technology robots that are gonna get this done for us. So I always say you should always take it upon yourself to go ahead and get this process done right. Now there's two ways that I have experience in how to wedge clay, all right? Now the first one you might be familiar with if you've had any experience at all in working with this medium is when you wedge clay and you do something like this. You take your two hands and you push down into it and it looks a little something like this, all right? And you move it and you push it down and you move it and you push it down and I'm just pushing my wrist down. Here's my problem. Number one, I feel really foolish doing this, y'all. This feels and looks to me like a baker kneading bread or like my cat when he jumps on me in the middle of the night, he's being wicked annoying and all, and he like wants my attention. I'm not down for this. Also, I don't physically understand how me moving this around and pushing it down and then moving it around is actually getting anywhere. And I've seen many people do this and it still becomes an issue. So let me show you my more efficient way of how to properly wedge clay. And it doesn't matter how big of a piece you're gonna do this, all right? You can do it the same way. What we're essentially gonna do is we're gonna turn this lumpy little thing here into a nice cube. Let me show you how this is done. All right, now, let me show you the more efficient way that I believe to be the best way to wedge up your clay, all right? So, everybody, you're gonna take your piece here, and what we're gonna do is we're going to smack it against the table repeatedly while turning it, and it's gonna form itself into a cube. Watch this, okay? So, hitting it, and I'm just dropping this now from no more than, say, like 6 inches high, all right? I'm gonna go all the way around. I hit all 4 sides, and at that point, I'm gonna turn it the other direction to make sure that I get those 4 corners as well. This way, thus ensuring that I am getting this to as much as a solid cube as possible in a reasonable amount of time. Now, here's the science behind what I'm doing right now. Every single time I'm hitting this, what am I doing? I'm compressing the clay together. It's forcing the clay to press together, and any air bubbles on the inside, they are being compressed into each other and thus being eliminated, all right? So, again, as I'm doing this, you notice I'm not putting a whole lot of effort into this, okay? I'm not throwing it down, boom, like from 3 feet up high. I'm not tossing it across the room or anything crazy like that. Instead, all I'm trying to do here is just drop it a little bit and turn it into a cube. Now with this, the easy question I get is, how long do I have to do this? Very simple answer for that. You do it for about a minute, all right? Now, if you're gonna wedge up a huge Mama Jama piece like this, as opposed to this little dinky thing, this I would probably wedge for at least 1.5 to 2 minutes worth just to make sure you get it. And again, it's no different. If I was working with this whole piece, I get it. It's a little bit louder, right? And it's the same thing. I'm just gonna whack it against there and continue that process of pounding it against the table. That's it. You do that for about a minute or two, and you're good to go. But yeah, we want to go ahead and we want to do it this way. This way, I have found the cube method of wedging to be extremely successful to produce less explosions and for students to have less issues in working with clay. Now, a lot of times what people will say to me, particularly my students, particularly after some time has gone by in my courses I teach specifically, and they'll come up to me and they'll say, hey, guess what? I never wedged my clay and you never knew about it, haha. And I'll always say like this, okay? Do you have to wedge your clay every single time? No, no one's gonna come up and mug you if you don't. However, working with unwedged clay is kind of like playing Russian roulette with 5 bullets instead of 1, all right? There's a really high probability that your piece will experience one of 3 major things. Something will crack, something will fall off, or something will blow up in it. All right, so you're better off, y'all, just going through the motions, just taking the extra minute out of your working time to wedge this up. The other beautiful part is that if you're gonna be working with larger pieces, say, all you need to do is wedge this up and you can actually pick off smaller components of it. You don't have to have some like little dinky piece like this for an eyeball and you gotta sit there and try and wedge it. That's silly. We don't need to do that, okay? So you can just go ahead and wedge up a big piece, pick it off, and you're good to go. And it's already compressed air together, okay? We don't have to worry about that at all, okay? So, thank you so much for watching this. Now you all know exactly what you gotta do before you do anything in clay. And that's rule number 1, ladies and gentlemen, okay? So, thank you so much for watching this.